Hey friends, it's Matt with BoLS, and obviously we here at BoLS love a good war game, but personally I've always been more of a board gamer. Thankfully, today's game is a wonderful combination of both those worlds. This is Warbonds Battle for Vitoria. Warbonds packs a ton of gameplay into their Apprentice Rules version, and even more into the Master Rules version. So let's get started. Now, Punk This Studios, the makers of Warbonds, have a full how to play video over on their channel, so be sure to go check that out. But we're going to go over all of the main mechanics you'll find when you're playing in the Apprentice Rules and then at the end in the Master Rules. Now, it's easy to argue over what makes something a war game versus a miniatures game versus a board game, but for sake of simplicity, we'll just call this a board game. Although calling Warbonds a board game doesn't fully capture everything that this game is. Warbonds covers everything from your grand strategic plan down to your low-level tactical deployments. What I mean by that is you'll have your strategic level of gameplay, like managing your army and their loyalty, and making sure that your war camp is properly taken care of, and things like that. Then there's the tactical level of gameplay, where you have things like making sure that your ranged units are properly positioned to take out the enemy's melee units, or making sure that your unit's attack damage type pairs well against your enemy's vulnerabilities, like sending your divine clerics against their unholy undead. In Warbonds, players take control of a warlord, and using their war camp and the surrounding wild areas, they will recruit units in an effort to, kill their opponents. There are a lot of units to choose from. Every hireable unit in Warbonds has their own unique stats, like health measured by their unit size, attack stats, damage vulnerabilities and resistances, and keywords, and special abilities, and alignment. There is a lot packed into every single unit, and choosing which ones to hire at any one moment is all part of what makes Warbonds so engaging. You get to build your entire army how you see fit from a wide selection of different units that are all going to work together in different ways. But the caveat to that being, every unit and warlord also has an alignment, and making sure to be aware of your warlord's alignment compared to those of the units you're hiring is really important in testing their loyalty. Warbonds utilizes two morale mechanics: leadership for your warlords and loyalty for your units. A lot of different things can affect a unit's loyalty and a warlord's leadership, but you can spend a unit's loyalty to activate certain special effects and abilities, and the warlord's leadership can be used to help facilitate that loyalty. So it's a back and forth mechanic that requires good thinking on how you want to employ your units. But unlike in a lot of games, chaos and law here aren't just names given to whatever unit. They function differently. How chaos units and law units both gain loyalty is really thematic in a way that's a lot of fun. Chaos units, enjoying a good fight as they do, will gain loyalty after their warlord attacks an enemy unit. On the flip side, the dutiful law units will gain loyalty after they attack an enemy unit near their warlord. So already baked into how the loyalty system works are two drastically different mechanics on gaining that loyalty. And this alignment system really makes sure that each warlord is going to play differently because of how they're gaining this loyalty. But that's not the only thing that sets one unit apart from the others. As we stated before, every unit has a variety of different keywords, which can have different effects. And while there are a variety of keywords, there are three that sort of stand above the rest in terms of their impact on the game. That is flying, small, and undead. Like everything else in Warbonds, the flying keyword has a lot more going on than you might expect. While this might look like one single board, it is actually two, just in a hidden kind of way. Units with the fly keyword can ascend to the second layer of the game board, the sky layer. The sky layer is effectively an entirely different battlefield than the ground layer. Units with the fly keyword can spend movement points to ascend to the sky layer, move around freely without worrying about bumping into anyone on the ground, and can rain down arrows from on high. and the melee units on the ground will just have to sit and wait for some ranged support to come deal with their aerial assaulters. Which again highlights the deeply tactical capabilities of Warbonds. As you might expect if you've ever played any JRPG, undead units take damage when receiving healing life energy, but are healed when taking death damage. But that's not the only example of this. Warbonds has many different creatures with vulnerabilities, resistances, and immunities to the 8 different damage types. Each unit will have their resistances, vulnerabilities, and immunities listed at the bottom of their stat card, which segues well into talking about how combat works. And if you're anything like me and don't always have the luck of the dice on your side, I've got great news. There is 0 randomness in Warbonds. You heard me right. And with 0 dice rolling, you'll never have to worry about your grand scheme failing to come to fruition because you just rolled a 1. Every unit will have their attacks per turn listed on their unit card. By default, every unit has a base attack damage of 1, and then simply multiply those 2 numbers together and that's how much damage they do. But a lot of in-game effects will affect a unit's attack stats in various ways. For example, vulnerability adds 1 to the base attack damage stat. But some effects can also modify a unit's attacks per turn. For example, many units have base attack damage bonuses against certain keywords, like how the Little Anarchists unit gains +2 attacks per turn versus large units. On the other hand, the Painbringers gain a +1 base attack damage versus small creatures. All of these different ways of modifying a unit's overall damage output really highlight the different strategies and tactics that a player can employ in trying to make sure they are maximizing their damage. Rather than simply just attacking one another like hireable units do, warlords, when they engage in combat, can go to the dueling table. During an honorable duel, warlords will continue fighting one another until either one of them loses or they are interrupted. While engaging in a duel, nearby allied units can jump to their warlord's aid, and again fitting in with their nature, chaos units can only interrupt a duel by attacking the opposing warlord, while law units can only interrupt the duel by blocking an incoming attack. And losing a duel is a great way to make sure that your units lose all respect for you. And these wide variety of units have to come from somewhere. In this case, war camps and wild areas. On top of their warlord, every player also has their war camp. The war camp is effectively a unit in and of itself. It can either be set up as a caravan to move around the board, or an encampment to be able to recruit new units. It's also where units go to resupply and heals and offer a variety of useful benefits. As players run around killing enemies and rallying the public to their side, they will gain war tokens. These war tokens can be spent to level up your war camp. A war camp's level determines their maximum defense points, recovery rate, border size, and the number of attacks they get per turn, because the war camp can attack and defend just like any other unit can. But upgrading your war camp is not just to make sure that your snowball of destruction keeps rolling. One of the paths to victory is being the first player to level your war camp up to level 3. But in a game with such grand of a scale as Warbonds, you might be a little worried that each one of my turns is going to take upwards of 20 minutes while I run through each of my units and what they're doing. Thankfully, that is not the case. Each unit has an initiative score, which determines which column it's placed in on the initiative board. Throughout the round, the turn indicator token will move around the board, showing the players which unit is going to go during that turn. So even if there are dozens of units on the board, you'll always be sure whose turn it is and whose turns are coming up next. This means that each unit gets to take its turn irrespective of which player it belongs to. This keeps the gameplay moving quickly while each turn is fairly short. It also allows for some higher level planning in getting to see which units are going to be going when, and potentially even modifying the unit turn order. But the initiative board does so much more than just track unit turn order. It also instructs the players on which actions their war camps can take, as well as handling each of their units potentially being recalled or retreating, and other end of round effects like the Dragon token, which can trigger the endgame, as well as war speeches, which allow warlords to gain leadership or loyalty, or perhaps even influence the public to their side, or persuading opposing units to join their army instead. That's a lot of game packed into one box. But what if you want even more? Well, thankfully, there is also the Master Rules, which add even more to Warbonds. The Master Rules version of Warbonds has the same base gameplay as the Apprentice version, but with a few new major mechanics. This game is deep, and perhaps best exemplified by the included Versus chart, which goes over all of the different matchups of every unit compared to every other unit. It's a lot. One of the most exciting new additions, I think, is new units, some of which will have an upkeep cost to balance out how much more powerful they are. While there are a lot of additions in the Master Mode version, I think the main one is settlements. Settlements are effectively neutral war camps that players can fight over. Settlements can grow their population and level up just like war camps do, and can also be defended and attacked and all that. Settlements also offer gold per turn, which is a new resource which players can use for a variety of different things, most notably maintaining those fancy new units we mentioned. But how players engage with these settlements depends on whether they wish to take it over or protect it. Players can assault these settlements in order to pillage them to gain resources, or they can place them under protection. Any settlement under protection will freely offer up some gold per turn to their protector. But of course, another player can come in and protect them even harder, stealing that protective control. And because Warbonds is a game with player elimination, and games can take a while, they've also included the optional arcade rule. The arcade rule basically says if a player is eliminated, they sit out for the rest of the round, and then have the option to jump back in on the next one. This also allows new players to jump in and out as they need to. This means you can feel free to invite that other friend to day 2 of your Warbonds weekend. So if you're one of those longtime gamers who's been itching for a board game that really offers that full wargame experience, you'll definitely want to check out Warbonds, Battle for Vitoria, Apprentice, or Master Mode. There is a ton of other mechanics we didn't even get to touch on here, but be sure to check out the official How to Play videos for a lot more details on all of that. Again, I am Matt with BoLS. Thanks for watching. Bye.